Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again, and today I'm going to be wrapping up my series on the library collection by Amouage with Opus number 5 and number 6, so stay tuned for that. And if you like the content, guys, hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Now, I have to say I've actually been pleasantly surprised with Opus 5 and Opus 6, where I have so far found most of the collection not that great. And I will say, though, there are, I believe, 10 or 11, and these are only 6 of them, but it is about half of the library collection, and so I think I have a pretty good feeling about what the collection's all about. But anyways, the first few of them I wasn't particularly impressed with, but they definitely changed quite a bit with Opus 5 and Opus 6. So I am going to talk about those ones today. I'm going to start off with Opus number 5. Now this is one that I was actually very surprised with because I'm not really a big fan of iris, but this does have an iris note, which I don't actually pick up tremendously with this one. It's a little bit clean in the mid, but I don't really get this sort of powdery vibe, especially because it's described as a powdery fragrance. It's not particularly powdery to me. What I actually get with this, especially right on the initial burst, is a very fruity vibe, and I was quite surprised with that because I was expecting this to be a lot more floral, but it has this very nice fruity vibe. Underneath that, I do get a little bit of a floral composition, but not a lot. And this one does sort of develop into a nice candied floral fragrance, and that sweetness definitely is something that plays a major role in this fragrance. It plays a major role in what my opinion makes it so pleasant to wear. But it does have this nice candied vibe that does tone down a lot, and it does remain, but it does remain quite sweet. And the florals do come out a little bit more in the mid and in the dry down, but ultimately this one doesn't come off particularly iris heavy to me, but it is a really, really nice, sweet fragrance. And as far as florals go, I have to say this so far has been one of my favorite floral fragrances. I'm not a big fan of florals. I do consider them to be a little bit feminine, but even that's not particularly it. I generally don't like florals even on a woman. I find them to be more kind of like something that smells like, maybe an old lady or something like that. That's not to say there are no florals that I like, but I'm very selective about them. There's very few that I actually enjoy, and there's even fewer that I would say I would actually consider wearing. But this is a really, really nice fragrance. It has a bit of a candy vibe, like I said, to it, which makes it very easy to wear, in my opinion. Now, performance-wise, it's not super strong, which I think kind of goes nicely with the floral composition. So it's not an overpowering fragrance at all. It is, however, pretty long lasting, so definitely get the 8 hours. There is a little bit of sillage and there is projection, a nice scent bubble, but it's not by any means beast mode, which is definitely something that I know Amouage is well known for. This is a nice powerful fragrance without being overpowering, if that makes sense. So it's not something that is going to dominate a room. It's not something that's even going to dominate over other strong fragrances. It's just something that people will smell as they get near to you. It does leave a nice sillage for sure. So you're going to get little whiffs of it as well throughout the day, which is nice. It's very pleasant when I get a nice whiff of this one, and I do enjoy it quite a bit. It is a somewhat classy fragrance, so I think this one is easy to wear work, actually, just because I think it's very likable. It's even something I could see wearing out like on a date or something, because it is that sweet candied vibe is playful in my opinion, and it does have a nice floral composition. Now, it does have rose in it, which I know a lot of people consider rose to be a very feminine note, and I will say that it definitely doesn't make it any more masculine, but it is a fairly unisex fragrance in my opinion. So very happy with that one. Really did bring this sort of discovery to a nice close with Opus 5. Very good. But let's first, before I wrap it all up, talk about Opus number 6. Now, Opus number 6, I actually remember smelling this one for the first time in an airport, and I actually was really, really impressed with it, and I was expecting this to be my favorite of the collection right from the start. Now, I, of course, had never worn it, but I had smelled it, unlike the others, which I hadn't really smelled much of. And it's funny because I actually remember smelling Opus 5 and not liking it. I do remember it being a little bit spicier than it actually is, at least on my skin, at least when I try it out. This is a very, very ambery fragrance. And so for people that like things that are very ambery, it's definitely one that you should check out. It has a little bit of smokiness and a little bit of spice, but it's really very, to me, something subdued and in the background. It is more of an amber forward fragrance. Now this one is, contrasted with number 5, a very strong and very thick fragrance. So this one, is definitely not playing any games with how potent it is, and it's definitely got a lot more performance, a lot more projection. It really is one of those fragrances that's definitely going to make itself a little bit more known and a little bit more forceful with the way that it smells. Amber itself, I always find it to be something that's a little bit difficult to describe what exactly it smells like. It's not really sweet, but there is a faint sort of touch of that, and there is kind of a bit of a spice and smoke to it, but it's not overwhelmingly so. It is more of this sort of crisp, not fresh, but very crisp and almost sharp amber feel to it. So I do like it, especially considering amber is another note that I'm not a huge fan of, but I do think that it is a fairly good fragrance. Opus number 6 here. I don't think it's my favorite from the collection. Before I give you a brief rundown of the entire collection, what I think of it overall, I will just say this one I think is a lot more formal because it is that amber forward. If you think about things like Grand Soir and other things that are easy to wear in a suit, and that hint of smokiness definitely does add a nice, gentlemanly, high-class quality to it. So I think it's a good fragrance, but as I just mentioned, it's not really my favorite from the collection. And in fact, if I'm going to order these, I actually like Opus number 5 the most, which was quite a surprise to me. And then I'm going to say Opus number 3, which is another surprise to me because it is also fairly floral, but it is something that's really nice and really easy to wear. And then I would say Opus number 6. So those are the top 3 from the collection for me. The next one I would have to go with would be Opus number 4. Now, the problem with Opus number 4, as I mentioned before, is that I find it extremely challenging in the sense that it's very spicy, but more in a gourmand food kind of a sense. This does smell a little bit like curry, in my opinion, or like a very Middle Eastern spice rack. So it does have that kind of smell to it with all of those spices, which is very interesting, but it is a little bit more challenging. And Opus number 2 and Opus number 1, I was not particularly impressed with either of those fragrances. And so, I'm going to put them at basically a tie for the bottom. The collection overall is interesting. It has a little bit more of a niche vibe to it than a lot of other of Amouage collection. It is definitely far more niche in my opinion, in the sense that I think that each one does appeal to a certain kind of person, but it's not something that I don't think there's a lot of mass appeal here. The one that I like the most, Opus number 5, I do think that it does have a certain amount of mass appeal because it is sweet, it's candied, and it is a little bit of a nice floral. But altogether, it definitely has a lot of fragrances in it that are different and are not going to be mass appealing. And so I think if that's something you're looking for, this is not the collection for you, but it is an interesting collection. I think it's quite a bit different from a lot of the Amouage Man fragrances, which I know is a lot more popular of a line. And I do actually have a discovery set for that. And I think I'm going to dive into it, not quite right now, but shortly after this one, I am going to get into those because I want to do a review on all those fragrances and try them all out and work my way through that. But anyways, I think it is worth checking out, in my opinion. If you like florals, you might actually really like Opus number 1 if you like Ylang Ylang. I do recall that being very prominent in that fragrance. Opus number 2, I didn't really enjoy at all. Opus number 3, as I mentioned, I do really like that one. It is another floral fragrance that doesn't come off too flowery and doesn't really smell too feminine. It is clean, it is a little bit fresh, and it is nice. As I mentioned with Opus number 4, if you want to smell like a spice cabinet, that is the one to try out. So anyways, guys, I think I'm going to cut it at that. That's it for this one. Amouage Library Collection. Some interesting fragrances in there if you get a chance to try them out, but definitely this is a fragrance house and a fragrance brand where I would say you should definitely try these before buying them, because each one is definitely not that mass appealing. Anyways, leave a comment down below. Have you tried anything from the library collection? Let me know which ones and if you like them. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.